Agreed to come down with us today and be here with us. You guys remember what instrument we talked about last week?
Guitar.
Guitar. So this week we're going to talk about banjo, and such a great instrument. And I know we have a lot of questions, but one thing that we heard last week is that we want to hear more music, you know. So and especially since we have such great musicians, and maybe I'll even try to play one here. You know, when we first got in the room, we kind of tried to find some common ground, and one song that we put out there was Sweet Georgia Brown, which is an old standard. So I thought maybe we'd give it a shot, and then we can talk and hear some more music after that. Start with a few questions, and then we'll, Jared, if there's anything you want to say after that, but I'd like to hear a few questions from some students. Does anybody have one that they want to start out with? That you're wondering about, Skylar?
Sure. What inspired you to learn banjo?
I first heard the banjo played in this relative style, bluegrass style, in the 60s mostly on recording. And I was just amazed at the number of notes that one instrument was putting forth. And I also loved the drive of the music. the pulse of it. So I thought it was very exciting.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Do you make your own banjo, or where do you get it?
I've never made a banjo, although there are people who do it. This is actually a relatively new banjo made by a fellow named Steve Huber. He's making great banjos, new banjos today.
Sophie?
Have you ever tried to play any other kinds of banjos?
Oh, yes. You mean like tenor banjos or plectrum banjos? There are different kinds of banjos, which is something I didn't know when I first was learning. Everybody in my family was a musician except my father, on my father's side. His father was a cellist, and when he heard that I was interested in playing the banjo, my grandfather gave me a tenor banjo that he had in his closet. A tenor banjo is a different neck than this is called a 5-string. But it's a shorter neck and it's tuned like a cello. So when he was younger, he used to play the cello out on some tunes he would play the tenor banjo, which was played with a flat pick, not with finger picks. And of course I didn't know the difference, and I was trying to learn how to finger pick this tenor banjo, and it took me a few months to realize that I needed a different kind of a banjo. But there are two kinds of 4-string banjos. There's the tenor banjo, and then there's the plectrum banjo. The plectrum banjo is the same kind of neck as this, except without the 5th string. So it's this width all the way down. So this has a shortened 5th string, which is mostly played as a drone, but can be played as a melody for melody as well.
Could you explain that a little bit more, like 5th string, drone? We don't know these words.
Well, if you think of a bagpipe, that's the easiest.
Bagpipe player here.
We have a bagpipe player.
Well, that's the easiest comparison, because pipes usually have one note that's constant, and then they play melody notes against that note, but that one note is the same. And that's the way the 5th string kind of works on the banjo, traditionally. But you can play melody with it also. You can see I'm fretting the 5th string here. If I'm just playing rolls, you can hear that there's a constant 5th string.
Is there a name for the
Nothing like
pattern
that
that
for
you
you
play?
guys.
There isn't just one pattern,
Right, so there's different
but they're called
patterns.
rolls.
Okay.
And the banjo, there are different tunings of banjo also. The most commonly used one in bluegrass is open G. It's tuned at open G chord. But there are different ways to tune the banjo as well.
What would be the reason for, tuning it to a different...
We have to play songs in different keys,
I see.
and some to get different sounds. There's open D tuning, there's a C tuning, there are minor tunings.
Well, why don't we hear another song, Gary, if you don't mind, and then we'll get back to some more questions. And I'll let you guys...
Okay, Bluegrass Breakdown.
Okay.
This is a tune that was the classic bluegrass band. Most bluegrass players consider the first real bluegrass band was Bill Monroe's band, when he had Earl Scruggs playing banjo and Lester Flatt playing guitar and Chubby Wise playing fiddle in the late 40s, 1940s. And this is a tune that Bill Monroe wrote, but it really showed off Earl Scruggs' banjo style. And it's called the Bluegrass Breakdown.
just start out playing like that on the banjo.
No.
Did you have any inspirations or teachers or, you know, when did you start playing?
Well, there was only one instruction book, and that was a book that Pete Seeger put together. The Bluegrass chapter was pretty weak, but I bought it anyway. I mean, everybody did because it was the only thing out there. In the mid to late 60s, 1960s, Bluegrass festivals began happening around mostly the southeast, and I went to one of my first ones in 41 years ago, Labor Day weekend, 1968, and it was really quite an education for me. I got to see some of the greatest bluegrass players, and got to hear music that I just would never have experienced otherwise.
Anybody else have some questions they want to ask?
When you're finger picking, like, would you get a different tone if you used like a flat pick like you would on a guitar?
Well, yes, but you wouldn't be able to get the roll effect. I mean, it's the style is made to use a thumb and two fingers, and this is a point I was going to make before when I started talking about the tunings. That because it's tuned to an open chord, you can actually get the same note in different places on the neck. You know, you can get the same note on different strings in different places on the neck. And because you're basically playing 16th notes most of the time in these rolls, the one kind of rule is that you don't use the same finger twice in a row. So you have to figure out ways of getting notes on different strings, so you don't use the same finger twice in a row. Because if you did, you would stumble.
And is that something that you know, I talked to a lot of my students about? You know, you have to keep practicing, and you know, especially beginning students, it's very difficult on the guitar. Sometimes they make a chord, but was there a time where it just kind of fell into place for you when you with that
Well,
style?
you have to put a lot of time in perfecting these rolls. And the year that I got good, it was a year I had a really horrible job, and I would come home every night from that job, and I would play the banjo, the same song, for like an hour and a half. And my wife, who doesn't play an instrument, she knew every note of that song, because I mean I would just play it over and over again. And at the end of that year, without even realizing, my right hand had reached another level.
Okay,
How fast can you play? I'm just wondering.
Well, not as fast as I used to be able to. Youth helps.
yeah. Yes, Izzy?
What means with bluegrass?
It just spoke to me. I don't know. I just felt it.
Yeah.
What's different between what you play and claw hammer?
Claw hammer is not played with picks. Usually it's played with an open back banjo, but not necessarily. This has a resonator, makes it somewhat louder. But there are banjos that don't have resonators that are called open back banjos. And I don't play claw hammer, but it's a style of both strumming and picking. But it's a different motion. You're not picking up with these fingers. You're picking down with your nail of your finger, and then you grab with your thumb. You grab or your nail of your thumb. You grab the fifth string. But it's similar to what Pete Seeger did. He called it. What did he call it? That's kind of what his version of it. But he plucked up on the string, whereas frailing, you're plucking down on the string. But it has the same kind of feel.
Josh?
Could you use finger picks on a guitar?
Yeah.
Adam?
Why'd you pick banjo to be your instrument?
I just heard it and I just was really excited by it. It just moved me.
It's not the only instrument you play, though, right?
I learned, actually, when I was in college, I was struggling to learn banjo. And I was a junior in college, and a freshman came to school, And he played banjo better than I did, but he didn't have a banjo with him at school. So I got a guitar, and I learned how to play rhythm guitar, and I let him use my banjo, and I learned everything he knew.
Rick, can you tell us why you picked the bass?
Bass players get a lot more work, I think. I think it's also a feel thing for me too. I play guitar a lot longer than I play bass, but bass speaks to me. There's something about shaping the chords and laying out the groove that I really enjoy. You kind of see me dance a little bit with bass.
Can you, like, lay out a little bit, shape the chords?
He's playing a little bit. So I'm kind of getting into a groove and we're swinging a little bit. And that, I don't know, that whole sort of kinesthetic feeling really spoke to me, and I'm getting a lot of work.
I just wanted to, I had a question for you guys in the audience. How many of you play an instrument? Wow. How many of you play fiddle? Only one, really?
Oh, we didn't have that out.
Nope, never mind. No fiddle. I thought it was flute.
A couple more questions, and we'll, if you don't mind, hear something else. Okay, Skylar.
If you know the guitar, like what are some of the main differences between banjo and guitar? Because they're related instruments. Like if you know the guitar, is it easier to learn the banjo?
I don't know the guitar as a lead instrument the way I know the banjo. So I think every instrument has they have differences, but there's to be good at any instrument, you really have to put in a lot of time and effort. And with any instrument, you have to learn where the sound of that instrument. Every instrument has a voice, and you have to learn where that voice is and bring out that voice.
What are other types of music you can play with the banjo instead of bluegrass?
Well, with the four-string banjos, it's typically used in Dixieland music, which is kind of early jazz, associated with New Orleans. And banjos went through a big period in the 1920s. Banjos were really kind of perfected by mostly the Gibson Company. They figured out how to build the instrument really well, and they were loud. And this was before. They might have had some microphones back then, but it was really before, certainly before electric instruments, before amplification, before PA systems. So if you had a group of banjos playing, you could really fill a room with a lot of sound.
Well, why don't we hear another song?
Okay, we're going to do the waltz. Okay. This is a waltz that was actually on a recorded band I'm playing with now. Recorded it this past spring. It's called My Dear Mother's Waltz.
Yes, Sophia. It's in what time station?
I don't
You
know.
know? Anybody?
Like a grade.
3, 4, right? 1, 2, yeah. We're learning about time signatures and music and stuff, so. One question I had, Jerry, was, you know, last week we learned what the primary instruments in a bluegrass ensemble are. And what would you say the role of the banjo within the typical, you know, traditional bluegrass ensemble is?
Well, the banjo is playing a syncopated roll, so it's playing around the beat. Just play just a G. Just play.
So you guys, if you tap, everybody tap your foot to the bass. Follow the bass
Syncopated means
with a
on
foot.
the elements.
And then listen to a banjo. It's not the bass. Okay, I know, it's okay.
When you do this, to make it a band.
Jerry, maybe you could tell them that 6 degrees of separation you have with the link with the day school. It's kind of interesting.
In the early 1970s, I was in a band that was based in Poughkeepsie. That was we did both bluegrass and country music, but we had a very, very good bluegrass band. And some, I guess, high schoolers from Poughkeepsie Day School started their own bluegrass band, inspired by us. And I recorded an album when I think some of them were still in high school, and one of the guitar players and the mandolin player played on my first record, and I'm still in touch with several of them. The bass player, he didn't play on my record, but actually he helped me in rehearsals. It's a guy named Mike Gold, and he's now a PhD in music. I think he lives in Minnesota, I think.
Minneapolis, yeah.
I'm sorry?
Minneapolis.
Minneapolis, yeah. George Langston, who's the guitar player I spoke of, I saw him in June, and he lives in New Mexico. And I didn't remember the banjo player's name for some reason, but George emailed me today to tell me Bruce Wynn. And Bruce had a brother, Marty, and a sister, Kate, who also went to Poughkeepsie Day School. There were several good mandolin players who came out of Poughkeepsie Day School. One of them was Paul Glass, who is a jazz mandolin player living in Austin, Texas now. So we have some quite prominent alumni here.
So, you know, when you play out, do you primarily play in clubs or festivals, or, I mean, what, you know, where could somebody see you playing these days? Or
well, during the warm weather months, we play a lot of festivals and town concerts and things. But in the wintertime, it's mostly bars or occasional library concerts or schools.
And, you know, last week we also watched a documentary that incorporated Gray Fox. And,
Bluegrass Journey.
yeah, right. And one thing we noticed, you know, was how fine of a line there is between the performers and the audience.
Right.
Can you talk at all about that?
Well, it's traditionally, the performers have been very accessible to the audiences. And, there's not a big wall between the audience and the performer.
It's kind of unusual these days to see, you know.
In rock, you would almost never meet your heroes, but
Right.
I can honestly say I've met just about all my bluegrass heroes.
Wow.
Because they're right there at the festival. You can walk right up to them and talk to them.
When bluegrass music started, Bill Monroe built upon older styles, which is called old-time music. But there was a tradition in the South, mostly in the South, of string bands, of banjos and fiddles and guitars playing together. And everybody played the melody at once. But Bill Monroe started his band about the same time as the invention of the microphone. And what the innovation that he had was that every instrument took turns getting up to the microphone and doing solos, almost like in the same way that jazz musicians will get up and step out and do solos, and the rest of the band will be playing backup.
Right. You sort of saw the Del McCoury's band on that documentary, kind of choreographed, kind of like.
Well, Del McCoury played with Bill Monroe.
Right. So, yeah. Any other questions?
Mike had some questions about the white membrane banjo. Somebody in my group just want to ask.
Well, this is it's a plastic head, and many years ago, before they had plastic heads, they used a skin head, like the way the drums do. This is really just a drum on a stick, if you think about it. But the problem with skin heads is that they don't stay as tight. They're not as consistently tight. And there were stories of performers in the old days with the skinhead banjo players waiting to go on. They would have a light bulb in the back, and they'd plug it in so that it would get hot and be tight. And then as they played their set, it would get softer and softer. The banjo would be going out of tune. And this was talking about live outdoor shows.
Yeah.
But the skinheads are the plastic heads are great. They last a very long time. Yes.
There's the banjo, like the white and then metal around it, and then there's like another like ring around it that has the holes.
Well, it's got there's a wood rim inside of here, which is a laminated wood. Usually it's maple, and then a metal tone ring fits onto that very tightly. And then the head goes over that, and then this is a stretcher band on the top, which is held with brackets, and you tighten them from the bottom, and it tightens by tightening on the stretcher band, it tightens the head over the tone ring. But it's quite heavy. If you want to try lifting it later, you'll see what I mean. But it produces that bell kind of sound, that ringing sound. And hear how much sustain this banjo has.
So if you were to take the plastic out and it wouldn't resonate at all. I mean, what?
Well, there wouldn't be any sound at all.
Right.
The strings vibrate, and it goes through the bridge, and through the head through the tone ring.
Right.
And the sound comes out through the holes here.
Yeah. Isn't there a 6-string banjo as well?
Well, it's a banjo guitar. They're also banjo mandolins,
right?
Which are basically mandolin necks on a banjo body, but they're not as popular.
That was going to bring me to my next thing. That there's sort of the traditional school, and then there's more modern approaches. Like a Bella Fleck is one person. I mean, is that something? Are you more of a traditionalist, or do you appreciate that?
Bela Fleck can play bluegrass, but he doesn't. But most of the music that he plays is not bluegrass.
Right.
He's a tremendous player.
How about modern bluegrass in general? It seems like it's kind of a similar type of thing where, like when Bob Dylan went electric, everybody freaked out? I mean, is it the same kind of attitude among purists with bluegrass? Or-
Well, yes, but you have to, you know, it's not like the style is hundreds of years old.
Right.
You know, you're talking classic bluegrass, you're talking about like 1948, you know.
Right.
And progressive bluegrass, you're talking about something that happened in the 60s and 70s and continues to today. So these are subtle kind of variations.
Right, okay. So if you were going to give advice to young people starting out wanting to play bluegrass, I mean, how would you advise them to start?
Well, if you want to play bluegrass, then you have to listen to it, because it's the kind of thing you can't you can't learn from off a page. Most bluegrass players don't know how to, can't read music. Many people learn theory afterward. You know, that's not my case. I don't read music, but I kind of learn whatever music theory I know from doing it, and then understanding the theory. And yet you have to kind of hear it in your head before you can play it.
Right. Well, I know they'd love to hear some more music. I don't know if you have anything else you'd like to play, but they don't get a chance to hear live banjo and upright bass all that often. So.
What's the other one we were working on?
See all the way, ladies? That's right. Come on, you mind.
Karen?
Oh, yes, we have another question.
Can you play like a really fast?
Well, I think bluegrass breakdown that I played before was pretty fast. So this is more medium tempo.
I asked you before how many played fiddle, there was only one. Anybody play banjo in here?
Wait, I didn't.
Oh.
I bet guitar. How many play guitar?
This is a song that came out of the jazz repertoire. It's called Farewell Blues.
does he know what you're going to play? Can you tell a bit about the structure of standard banjo songs for this, and how do you know when to end? Three questions.
Well, he's following me, so he's listening.
Okay.
I mean, maybe you want to answer that.
Well, yeah, I mean, this is the job of a bass player is to follow the lead instrument, and this is spotlights on the banjo, and Jerry's picking the songs, and so some of these I know, some of these I've played before, and others I'm just actually learning for the first time. There's a lot of similarities amongst bluegrass songs, and there's a lot of crossover to jazz, so if you played 20 bluegrass songs, you probably could figure out most of the others just by hearing it because you've heard it so much. So it's the kind of genre where you can walk into any jam session, you'll hear a lot of the same songs, and like the similarities allow you to hear the changes coming. Nothing wrong with it.
And the bass gets a break sometimes, right?
It depends on the band. It depends on the band. It's kind of rare, but yeah. Once in a while. In bluegrass, bass players don't play a whole lot of melody. There are some who do, some who do. Well, I don't play melody particularly well, but there are some situations where I might get a break and I'll play some runs or I'll slap. Something like that, but it's limited in bluegrass.
Any other questions for you guys? Well, one question I had was, do you have any banjo players or bass players that you idolize or admire or listen or would recommend to these guys or myself to listen to?
Well, if you wanted to play bluegrass, I'd say start with Earl Scruggs and work outward. Bill Keith is somebody you know, lives in Woodstock. He's a great banjo player. He played with Bill Monroe. He worked. There's a book that Earl Scruggs' name on how to play the 5-string banjo Scruggs style, but Bill Keith did most of the work on that book.
How much does banjo cost?
Well, I heard of one for sale today for $1,500, but this one is about $4,000. New.
4,000.
How about
What are the
bass?
cheapest?
So what sets it apart, say, from one that would be $1,500? I mean, better craftsmanship or parts or wood. I mean, I guess it's like any instrument.
It's the sound, how playable it is.
Right. Yeah. How about the video?
This banjo has a radius neck, radius fingerboard, which means it's slightly curved, which I find easier. As you can see, there's a slight curve to it. It's not perfectly flat. But the problem then is that you need a special capo to go along with that, which is like $120. But I'm talking about professional instrument here.
How about with the bass?
This bass is a Maisel. It was made in Germany, like 1952 or so, and it cost me about $2,000. I have another bass that was made for me in Connecticut that was closer to $3,000. But I started out on a bass that was about $650, $700. There's definitely instruments out there that you can learn on before you realize or you learn that it's what you want to do and you go out and buy a more expensive instrument.
Most bluegrass players prefer a plywood bass rather than like a carved bass that you might have with the jazz. For jazz you want a more sustain. With bluegrass you want actually less sustain.
Yeah, this is a plywood, and I have another one that is a solid top carved, and so I play some jazz and some orchestral music on that bass.
So when they made a bass for you, what did you have them do with it?
It was a company down in Mystic called Upton Bass, and They give you options as far as what kind of wood you want to use and what color you want it to be and how you want the feel to be. Like jazz players prefer a much lower action than orchestral players who prefer it higher for the bow. So you can sort of pick from different options like that. And you can choose between plywood back and sides or solid top or all plywood. It's kind of nice to pick it out right from the beginning and know it's made for me, custom.
How about your guitar, Aaron?
This guitar, well, I stumbled into playing gypsy jazz several years back, so I've been immersed in learning about the music of a gypsy guitar player from Paris, right? It's called Django Reinhardt. So this guitar is actually in the style that he and his bandmates used, which was designed by a man named Michael Ferry, who designed this originally to be like a classical style guitar. But it was co-opted by that group, and again, similar to the banjo, they were looking to project because they didn't have amplifiers and so forth like that. So various ways that happens is it's a larger scale on the neck, like a classical guitar, and this is called a D hole. This is considered the rhythm instrument. The lead instruments have an oval hole, but it gets a very bright and projecting kind of sound, and there's special strings actually that you use to get that. So it's a different approach than to bluegrass, but in actuality, there's a lot of similarities between the two, and especially, you know, in the sort of different roles for different instruments in the band. The guitar is a very percussive part, and there's no drummer, so it needs to play a very percussive role. You know.
Yeah, somebody had asked earlier, how do you make a banjo, or can you make a banjo? Who was that? The book that Jerry mentioned, the Earl Scruggs book on how to play the 5-string banjo, it has in the appendix directions on how to make a banjo. I can't imagine anybody actually doing it, but it's there if you're curious. It's not something you do over a weekend.
There are kits available too.
Well, we looked at some of the roots this morning and how it actually came from Africa, and some of the instruments we saw from Africa are pretty amazing.
There are a lot of things that are adjustable on a banjo that affect the tone. This is called the tailpiece, and how close the tailpiece is to the head will affect the tone. The type of bridge, how tight the head is, the gauge of the strings, the type of finger picks you use. So there's just a lot of variables. And then the closer you play to the bridge, the sharper the tone. The more you go toward the neck, the more mellow it gets.
Yes.
Did you play the banjo with nylon strings?
Actually, when I was learning, there was a man named Paul Cadwell who played classical banjo, and it was a 5-string banjo strung with nylon strings, and he played classical style music on it. It didn't sound like this banjo; it sounded different.
All right. Well, what's it?
Sing the song?
Okay,
No, it's not me. It's
taking my children for years to that festival because they have a Bluegrass Academy for kids. And you can go for 4 days and learn on one of these instruments. And you know, even if you're a beginner, my son now plays guitar, mandolin, and fiddle extremely well. Well enough where he could have jumped in right now without knowing the songs and played all this. So there's a lot of young people playing bluegrass. There's a lot of really cool young bands playing bluegrass. People coming out of Berkeley College who are, you know, like really well-trained musicians and all. Some of the Nashville musicians, top bluegrass bands are young bands these days. It's worth checking out.
Jake will remind you of that in June.
Yeah. Are you going?
Oh, you can go.
I might take.
You camp there. Everybody camps out. Everybody has campsites, and we spend a lot of time learning how to play.
Yeah.
Let's give these guys one more round of applause.
Yeah, thank you so much.